Hi everyone, this is lecture number 6, The Rise of Turkish Empires in Anatolia. Right, so we know that from the ashes of the Roman Empire rose the Byzantine Empire and Orthodox Christianity. We've also learned about the birth of Islam in 612 AD and how early Islamic empires like the Umayyads and Abbasids made major contributions to world culture. Well, from what remained of the Abbasid Empire by the early 900s or the 10th century, a new group of people is going to emerge in Anatolia called the Turks. Remember the Abbasids who had a capital at Baghdad? Well, they expanded their empire across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Spain they were all united under Islam. Well, bit by bit, they're going to lose control over parts of their empire. Mrs. Molloy can't really talk today. Sorry. The word Turk is thought to come from a term used by the Abbasids to describe a group of raiders who used to have camels that they traveled from place to place on for trade. This term that they referred to them as was Tuqiu, spelled Tu-Kiu. The Tuqiu were often purchased as slaves by the Abbasids, and then they were trained for military use and as bodyguards for the Abbasid army and leadership. These Turks, as they eventually were called, began converting to Islam and eventually took over what remained of the weakened Abbasid Empire. Large groups of these Turks who traveled together were called Seljuks, spelled S-E-L-J-U-K-S, but pronounced Seljuk. Eventually, more and more Seljuks banded together, allowing them to take over Baghdad. These Seljuk Turks attacked the Byzantine Empire, nearly taking over in 1071 AD. The Seljuk leaders soon made strategic alliances with Persian people and set up a dynasty, or a ruling family. The founder of the Seljuk dynasty was a guy named Togrul Beg, who made the city of Isfahan in Persia his new capital city. The Seljuks treated the Persians really well, often appointing them to important government positions, such as the position of vizier. The vizier was sort of like a prime minister. One of the most famous of all the Seljuk sultans or leaders was a man named Malik Shah, who is perhaps best known for the beautiful mosque that he built at Isfahan. Seljuk leaders glorified Persian culture through building projects and literatures. The Turks actually adopted Persian as their official language. Seljuk leaders were known as Shahs, spelled S-H-A-H-S, Shahs. This is a Persian word for king. Have any of you ever watched Argo, the movie? Yeah. Well, we're going to talk all about modern Iran and the Islamic Revolution in 1979, which led to the king of Iran fleeing the country. He was the Shah of Iran. So you can see that the word Shah has remained even in modern times, although they no longer have a Shah today. The Seljuks loved everything Persian, including poetry. One of the most famous Persian poets was Rumi, spelled R-U-M-I. In your textbook, they have an excerpt of one of his romantic poems in which he says, "Burning with long-time fire, wanting to sleep with my head on your doorsill, my living is composed only of this trying to be in your presence." Yes, Rumi often reminisced about love and human passions, and man, I don't know which is more uncomfortable, listening to Mrs. Molloy quote Rumi or learning that famous singer Madonna often reads Rumi poems. Yes, awkward moment. Cue the crickets chirping, please. Okay. Right, I think I forever ruined any chance of any of you studying Persian poetry, so I apologize for that. In any event, the Seljuk Turks helped to glorify Persian culture and learning. Unfortunately, the Seljuk Turkish Empire sort of fell apart after Malik Shah died. No one could quite compare to the Shah, just like no one will ever quite compare to Mrs. Molloy's amazing class. Okay, just horsing around. Haha. Right, so the Seljuk Empire fell apart into several separate kingdoms by 1092, and it was this year that the wars of religion, called the Crusades, began. Pope Urban II launched a crusade by Christians to reclaim the Holy Land from Jewish and Muslim inhabitants. We're going to talk a lot about Holy Lands this year. The Holy Land is located in what we call Palestine within modern-day Israel. It is sacred to Jews, Muslims, and Christians. Well, in 1099, the Christians captured Palestine and proceeded to massacre all of its inhabitants, which, I don't know, doesn't seem very Christian to me. I'm not trying to be judgmental or anything. Anyway, the leaders of the former Seljuk Empire were able to band together just enough manpower under the leadership of a guy named Saladin I, who was of Kurdish origins, by the way, and they reclaimed the Holy Land for Muslims in 1187 AD. Saladin brokered a peace deal with Western King Richard I from England, which gave Muslims control of the area, but allowed for Christian pilgrims to visit their holy sites. Other Catholic popes later called for further crusades, with the last one around the 13th century, but none of which were particularly successful, in the sense that many people died and little or no territory was gained. We're going to talk more extensively about the Crusades in our Middle Ages unit. However, the overriding idea I think you need to remember here about the Crusades is that these religious wars ultimately proved to be unsuccessful for Christians, with Muslims remaining in control of that part of the world. In addition to the Crusades, though, the remaining Seljuk Turks also battled against the Mongols. Remember Genghis Khan, etc., from my lecture on Russia? Yeah, well, the Mongols also invaded Seljuk territory, slaughtering many, many Turks. A famous Mongol leader who attacked Baghdad was Hulagu, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that, or Hulagu. If I'm butchering this, I'm very, very sorry. I do not speak Mongolian. I don't understand. Anyway, he was Genghis Khan's grandson, Hulagu. Maybe you should Google it and see what the correct pronunciation is. Right, it's spelled Hulagu. Well, Hulagu killed the last of the Abbasid emperors by having him rolled up in a carpet and then trampled by horses to death, which, apart from being totally violent and disturbing, proves another point. The Mongols were fantastic at conquering people. However, we also know that they were terrible leaders. Soon, a new group of Turkish people they're going to gain power there. They became known as the Ottomans, and they were able to rid themselves of Mongol rule. It was the Ottomans who will eventually take over what remained of the Byzantine Empire and establish the modern nation we call Turkey. And